I won $5.2 million in the lottery, and on the very same day I was ready to tell my wife the news that would change our lives forever. She handed me divorce papers and told me our life together was mediocre. My name is Darius Holloway, and I am 32 years old. That Thursday afternoon around 6:30, I came home from my job as a senior accountant at a mid-size firm in Dallas, Texas, with a winning ticket folded carefully inside my shirt pocket. I had checked the numbers at least 20 times on my phone throughout the day, convinced I had misread them, that it had to be some kind of mistake. $5.2 million. It felt unreal, like I had stepped into somebody else's life. I walked up the stairs to our apartment, already rehearsing in my head how I would tell her, imagining her face lighting up, imagining us laughing and planning together the future we thought we wanted. When I opened the door, the apartment was unusually quiet. The television was off. No music was playing. I set my briefcase down and saw my wife, Vanessa, sitting on the couch in the living room. She was not scrolling through her phone like she usually did after work. She sat straight back, hands resting on her knees, staring at the front door as if she had been waiting for me to appear. On the coffee table in front of her was a large manila envelope, the kind you associate with legal trouble or bad news from a bank. "Darius?" Vanessa said, and her voice sounded different, flat, rehearsed, almost bored. "We need to talk." I smiled reflexively, still buzzing with my secret, still thinking about the lottery ticket burning against my chest. "I need to tell you something incredible, too." "You should sit down," Vanessa interrupted, and she pointed not to the space beside her on the sofa where I always sat, but to the armchair across from her, like we were two strangers in a negotiation. I sat slowly, an uneasy knot forming in my stomach. My smile lingered a second too long on my face before dissolving. Vanessa picked up the envelope and held it out to me with both hands. "These are divorce papers. I've already signed everything. I just need your signature." The world seemed to tilt. I stared at her, then at the envelope, and then back at her. Divorce. The word came out like it belonged to a different conversation, someone else's life. My hands trembled as I opened the envelope and slid out the stack of documents. There they were. Legal forms, official seals, and Vanessa's signature in blue ink on all the pages that mattered. "What is this?" The words barely made it past my throat. "What are you talking about?" Vanessa let out a small, exasperated sigh, like she was tired of repeating herself to a stubborn chit. "We've been distant for months, Darius. You know that. I'm not happy anymore. I didn't want to keep doing this." I blinked in confusion. "Months?" "Vanessa, I've been working overtime so we could go on vacation this year. I bought you that necklace you wanted for your birthday. We were literally talking last week about remodeling the kitchen. How does that add up to divorce?" "It's not enough," she snapped, cutting me off. "Nothing you do is ever enough. I'm tired of living like this. I'm tired of waiting for things to get better. I'm tired of settling for this mediocre life." The word mediocre sliced through me like a blade I never saw coming. "I'm 32, Darius," she continued, her voice edged with frustration, as if I had personally stolen years from her. "I can't waste my life in a marriage that's not going anywhere. I deserve something better. I deserve to be happy." I looked at her, searching her face for some trace of the woman I had fallen in love with 9 years earlier. The woman who once swore she didn't care about my salary or job title, only that we build a life together. "Is there someone else?" I asked, even though part of me didn't want to know. Vanessa looked away for the first time since I walked in. "That's irrelevant." "Of course it's relevant," I said, feeling anger begin to push through the shock. "If you're asking me for a divorce, I have the right to know whether there's another man." She crossed her arms defensively. "It's not what you think." "Then what is it?" I pressed. Vanessa's jaw tightened. I met someone, she finally admitted, still refusing to meet my eyes. But nothing happened until after I decided our marriage was over. Technically, I wasn't unfaithful. Technically, I repeated bitterly. Who is he? His name is Garrett, she said. He's an architect. He owns his own firm. I met him at the gym 3 months ago. 3 months. The timeline dropped into place like a weight. 3 months ago. I echoed the words back at her, letting them settle between us. So you met him right after I bought you that $500 necklace you had to have? Right after I paid for your car repairs when you backed into that pole at the mall, and it wiped out most of my savings? Vanessa stood up abruptly, irritation flaring across her face. I'm not going to sit here while you list every little thing you've ever spent on me. I didn't force you to buy anything. You offered because I loved you, I replied, standing too. Because I thought we were building something together. Well, I didn't want to keep building this, Vanessa said sharply, gesturing between us like our marriage was a broken shell from a discount store. Sign the papers, Darius. Be mature about it. There's no reason to make this complicated. She expected me to beg. I could see it in the way she squared her shoulders, ready to reject apologies, ready to refuse pleas. Instead, I took a slow breath, gathered the papers, and slid them back into the envelope. I'm going to have a lawyer review these before I sign anything. Vanessa frowned. A lawyer? Why? This is a simple divorce. We have no children. There's nothing complicated here. I just want my half of what we have and to move on with my life. Your half of what we have? I repeated. Do you mean the apartment that's in my name because you didn't qualify for the mortgage, or the furniture I paid for, or the car that's technically mine that you've been driving? She narrowed her eyes. I'm your wife, Darius. Legally, I'm entitled to half of everything. We both know that. We'll see what my lawyer says. Your lawyer? Vanessa laughed, the sound sharp and dismissive. Be serious. You can barely afford the bills. How are you going to pay a good attorney? Don't embarrass yourself. There it was, the contempt that had been simmering beneath the surface for years. In her eyes, I was just a safe placeholder, a man doing his best, but never shining bright enough for the life she imagined she deserved. When something shinier appeared in the form of Garrett, the architect, she stepped over me without looking back. I'm staying at my mom's tonight, Vanessa announced, grabbing her purse from the side table. I'm giving you until the weekend to think about this rationally, but I'm not changing my mind. Vanessa walked to the door, then paused and turned to look at me one last time. Just so you know, she added, Garrett and I are making plans to move in together. He has a penthouse in Uptown with a view of the park. I'm finally going to have the life I deserve. With that, she left, closing the door behind her. The silence that followed was heavy, echoing in the small apartment that had held our entire shared life for 8 years. I stood in the middle of the living room, holding divorce papers in one hand, while the winning lottery ticket burned in my shirt pocket. Slowly, I reached inside my shirt, pulled out the ticket, and stared at the printed numbers under the lamplight. They shimmered with possibility. $5.2 million, enough to fund any version of the life she deserved. But as I stared down at the ticket, something inside me hardened. If Vanessa wanted to walk away from our marriage because she believed I was mediocre, she would be divorcing that version of me, the one she thought was broke and small. The man who claimed this ticket and the life that came with it would not belong to her. But to understand how we got here, how a $2 lottery ticket became the most expensive mistake of her life, I need to take you back to where it all started. 9 years ago, I was 23 years old, working as a junior accountant at a small firm in Dallas. I lived in a studio apartment that cost $650 a month, and I ate ramen noodles 4 nights a week because that was what I could afford. I was building something, though, slowly, carefully. Paying off student loans, saving a little each month, taking accounting courses at night to move up. I wasn't special, and I knew that. But I was steady. I showed up. I worked. Vanessa was 23 too when I met her. She worked as a receptionist in the same building where my firm had its offices. She came from a small town in rural East Texas, the kind of place where poverty wasn't just a statistic but a way of life. Her father had worked in a feed mill until his back gave out. Her mother cleaned houses. Vanessa had come to Dallas with nothing but a high school diploma and a fierce determination to never go back to that kind of life. We met at the coffee shop on the ground floor of the building. I used to go there on Tuesday and Thursday evenings to do taxes for local families as a side hustle. Vanessa noticed me one night, papers spread across a table, calculator clicking, helping an older woman understand her deductions. She came over when the woman left, coffee cup in hand, and sat down across from me. "You do this for free?" she asked. "Sometimes," I said. "Depends on whether they can pay. Most of them can't." She looked at me with something I couldn't quite read at the time. Later I would understand it was respect mixed with calculation. "That's nice," she said. "Most people wouldn't bother." We started talking. She told me about the town she left behind, the trailer park where she grew up, the way her mother's hands cracked and bled in the winter from all the cleaning chemicals. I told her about my own family, my parents who worked double shifts to put me through college, my sister Monica who was studying nursing in Houston. We both understood what it meant to start from the bottom and claw your way up. Our first date was at a cheap Tex-Mex place near the apartment. We split an order of nachos because neither of us wanted to spend too much. Vanessa looked across the table at me that night, her eyes bright in the dim restaurant light, and said something I would remember for years. "I don't need fancy, Darius. I just need real." I believed her. God help me, I believed her. We dated for a year. In that time, I got promoted from junior accountant to a mid-level position. My salary went from $38,000 to $45,000. It felt like a fortune. Vanessa was still working reception, making $22,000 a year. And we talked about building a life together. We talked about saving for a house, about having kids someday, about the kind of stability neither of us had growing up. When I proposed, it wasn't with a big diamond or a fancy restaurant. We were on the rooftop of my apartment building on a warm spring night, and I had a cheap ring I'd saved 3 months to buy. She cried when I asked her. Real tears. She said yes, and she held me so tight I could feel her heart beating against my chest. "Always together," she whispered. "No matter what." We got married at the courthouse the next month. Vanessa wore a white dress she bought at a discount store, and I wore the only suit I owned. My parents came up from Houston. Her mother drove in from East Texas. Monica stood beside me as my best woman. It was small and simple, and Vanessa seemed happy, genuinely happy. The first 6 years of our marriage were good. Not perfect, but good. I kept getting promoted. By year 3, I was a senior accountant making $55,000. By year 5, I was at $62,000. We bought an apartment in year 3, a modest 2-bedroom place in a decent neighborhood. The mortgage application had to go in my name alone because Vanessa's credit score wasn't high enough. She had some old debts from before we met, medical bills and a car loan that had gone bad. I didn't mind. We were partners. What was mine was hers. Vanessa supported me during those years. She packed my lunches. She encouraged me when I worked late or studied for certifications on weekends. We took cheap vacations to the Gulf Coast, staying in budget motels and cooking our own meals. We stayed up until 2 in the morning talking about our dreams, our fears, the life we were building brick by brick. But something started to shift in year 7. I was 31, working 50 to 60 hours a week, chasing a senior manager position that had opened up at the firm. Vanessa was still working reception, but she had started spending more time with a new group of friends, women she'd met through a yoga class. These women had bigger houses, nicer cars, husbands who worked in finance or tech. They took trips to Napa Valley and posted pictures on social media of themselves at wineries and spas. Vanessa started comparing. At first it was subtle. A comment here and there about how so-and-so's husband just bought her a new SUV, or how another friend was remodeling her kitchen with granite countertops and custom cabinets. I tried to brush it off, tried to remind her that we were building something solid, that we didn't need to keep up with anyone else. But the comments kept coming. They started to sting. The first real crack appeared at her cousin's wedding. It was a big affair at a country club in Fort Worth, the kind of wedding where every detail screamed money. I wore the same suit I always wore, a $400 suit I'd bought at Macy's 3 years earlier. It was clean and pressed, but it wasn't custom tailored. It wasn't designer. Vanessa noticed. Halfway through the reception, she leaned over to me and said, just loud enough for me to hear, "You know, you could have gotten a nicer suit for this. Everyone else looks like they actually tried." The words landed like a slap. I looked at her, waiting for a smile, for some sign she was joking. She wasn't. She was staring across the room at the other men, at their expensive watches and tailored jackets, and I could see the embarrassment in her eyes. Embarrassment that I was her husband. I didn't say anything that night. I told myself she was just stressed, that weddings made people act strangely. But the comment stayed with me, burrowing under my skin like a splinter I couldn't pull out. Things got worse in year 8. 3 months before she handed me those divorce papers, Vanessa joined an upscale gym across town. It cost $180 a month, which was steep for our budget, but she insisted it would help her feel better, more confident. I didn't want to be the kind of husband who said no to something that made his wife happy, so I agreed. I paid the membership fee with my credit card and told her to enjoy it. That's when she met Garrett Ashford. I didn't know his name at first. I just started noticing changes. Vanessa began coming home from the gym later and later. 8 o'clock became 9, then 10. She bought new workout clothes, expensive leggings and sports bras that cost more than anything she'd ever owned before. She started keeping her phone face down on the table when we ate dinner, and she'd grab it quickly if it buzzed, taking the call out on the balcony where I couldn't hear. I noticed, but I didn't want to be the paranoid husband. I didn't want to be the guy who accused his wife of cheating based on a hunch and some late nights at the gym, so I ignored the knot in my stomach. I told myself I was being irrational. 2 months before the divorce papers, Vanessa's birthday came around. I wanted to do something special, something to show her I was paying attention, that I cared. I saved up and bought her a necklace she'd been eyeing for weeks. A delicate gold chain with a small pendant. It cost $500, which was more than I'd ever spent on a single gift. I wrapped it carefully and gave it to her over dinner at a nice Italian restaurant. She opened the box, looked at the necklace and said, "Oh, that's nice." That's nice. 2 words, no hug, no kiss, no excitement in her eyes. Just a polite acknowledgement, the kind of response you'd give to a distant relative who bought you socks for Christmas. I tried not to let it hurt. I tried to tell myself she was tired, that she'd appreciate it more later. But deep down, I knew something had changed. The woman sitting across from me wasn't the same woman who cried on that rooftop when I proposed with a cheap ring. 6 weeks before the divorce papers, Vanessa backed her car into a pole in a parking lot at the mall. The damage was significant, over $1,200 in repairs. She didn't have the money to cover it. Her paycheck barely covered her personal expenses as it was. So I paid for it. I drained most of my savings account, the money I'd been setting aside for emergencies, and I paid the body shop in full. Vanessa forgot to thank me. Or maybe she didn't forget. Maybe she just didn't care enough to say the words. Either way, I never heard them. Looking back now, I can see the timeline clearly. 3 months before she handed me those papers, she met Garrett at the gym. 2 months before, I bought her a necklace she barely acknowledged. 6 weeks before, I paid for her car repairs and got nothing in return, and the whole time she was measuring me against this other man, this architect with his own firm and his Porsche and his penthouse in Uptown. I was being erased, replaced piece by piece, and I didn't even realize it until it was too late. The day I bought the lottery ticket started like any other Thursday. I woke up at 6 in the morning, made coffee, got dressed, and drove to the office. The firm was busy. We were in the middle of tax season, which meant long hours and tight deadlines. My boss, Clayton Burke, had been hinting for weeks that a senior manager position was opening up, and he wanted me to apply. It would mean a raise, more responsibility, a step forward in my career. On any other day, that would have been the most important thing on my mind. But that Thursday, as I sat at my desk staring at spreadsheets, all I could think about was the distance between me and Vanessa. The way she barely looked at me anymore. The way conversations had become transactional, just logistics about bills and schedules. I felt like I was living with a stranger who wore my wife's face. At lunch, I walked to a gas station a few blocks from the office. I needed air. I needed to get out of the building, away from the fluorescent lights and the hum of computers. The Powerball jackpot sign out front caught my eye. $5.2 million. I'd bought a ticket almost every week for years, just $2 here and there, never expecting to win. It was more of a habit than anything else, a tiny indulgence that let me imagine, just for a moment, what life might be like if money wasn't always tight. I bought a ticket, tucked it into my wallet, and didn't think about it again until later that afternoon. At 4 o'clock, I was sitting in a conference room reviewing a client's tax return when my phone buzzed with a news alert. The Powerball numbers had been drawn. I almost didn't check. I'd been playing for 7 years and never won more than $10. But something made me pull up the lottery app and enter the numbers from my ticket. 1 matched, then 2, and then 3. My heart started pounding. 4, 5. The Powerball. I stared at the screen, my hands shaking. Every single number matched. $5.2 million. I checked again and again and again, 20 times, sitting in that conference room, convinced there had to be a mistake, that the app was glitching, that this couldn't possibly be real. But it was real. The numbers didn't change. $5.2 million. After taxes, somewhere around $3.8 million. Enough to pay off every debt, enough to quit my job if I wanted. Enough to buy a house, travel, live without the constant weight of financial stress pressing down on my shoulders. Enough to give Vanessa the life she said she deserved. I sat in the restroom stall for 10 minutes, crying quietly, my face in my hands. This was it. This was the escape, the validation, the proof that I wasn't mediocre, that I could provide, that I was worth something. I imagined telling Vanessa that night, imagined her face lighting up. Imagined us laughing and holding each other and planning a future that suddenly felt wide open. I folded the ticket carefully and tucked it into my shirt pocket, right over my heart. I finished the workday in a daze, barely able to focus on anything. I drove home rehearsing what I would say, how I would tell her, how we would celebrate. And then I opened the door and she was sitting there with divorce papers and the entire world turned upside down. The next morning I woke up on the couch, my body stiff and my mind buzzing. The manila envelope still sat on the coffee table, proof that the previous night had actually happened. Vanessa had really asked for a divorce. She really had another man, and I really had $5.2 million she knew nothing about. With my head clearer than it had been in months, I replayed the last 3 months in my mind. The late nights when Vanessa came home from the gym long after the usual time. The calls she took on the balcony, the sudden obsession with her appearance, the expensive clothes, the way she dressed up just to run errands. I had ignored the signs, telling myself she just wanted change. I had been naive. That ended now. I picked up my phone and scrolled to the number of Elliot Pierce, a divorce attorney I had met at an accounting conference several years earlier. He had a reputation for being sharp, aggressive, and thorough. I dialed his number, my heart pounding. "Pierce Law," a receptionist answered. "This is Elliot." A deep voice came on the line a moment later. "Mr. Pierce, it's Darius Holloway. We met at the Dallas Accounting Symposium a few years ago." "Of course," Elliot replied. "The numbers guy. What can I do for you, Darius?" "My wife gave me divorce papers yesterday. She already signed them and wants me to sign as soon as possible. Before I do, I need someone to go over everything with me. And there's something else you need to know." "Do you have children?" Elliot asked. "No." "Any shared property?" "The apartment is in my name. She didn't qualify for the mortgage when we bought it 6 years ago." "All right. Other significant assets?" I hesitated, then inhaled. "I just won a large lottery prize, $5.2 million. She doesn't know." There was a silence on the other end, then a soft whistle. "Interesting. When did you win?" "The ticket is from 2 days ago. I checked the numbers yesterday before I came home." She handed me the divorce papers right as I was about to tell her. "Have you claimed the prize yet?" "Not yet." "Good," Elliot said, his voice steady and focused. "Do not claim anything until we meet. Come to my office at 11 this morning. Bring the papers she gave you and the ticket. We'll make sure your wife doesn't touch a cent." I hung up, feeling an unexpected sense of calm. For the first time since Vanessa had handed me that envelope, I felt like I had some control over my life again. Elliot's office was on the 20th floor of a high-rise in downtown Dallas, all glass and polished wood with framed certificates on the walls. A receptionist ushered me into his office as soon as I arrived. "Darius," Elliot said, standing to shake my hand. He was in his mid-40s, tall and lean, with gray starting to thread through his dark hair. "Have a seat. Let me see what we're dealing with." I handed him the manila envelope and the lottery ticket. He studied the divorce documents carefully, underlining sections, jotting notes on a legal pad. Then he examined the ticket, checking dates and small printed codes. After what felt like 20 minutes of silence, he leaned back in his chair. "All right, here's the technical side. Right now, you and your wife are still legally married. Generally, any significant income or assets acquired during the marriage belong to the marital estate, including lottery winnings." My stomach dropped. "So she's entitled to the money?" "Generally," Elliot replied, raising a hand. "But your wife did you a very unexpected favor." Elliot flipped a few pages and pointed at a paragraph halfway down one of the documents. "Right here. This section states that both parties waive any claim to each other's future income or unexpected gains, including bonuses, inheritances, and prizes acquired after the divorce is finalized. It's an express divorce agreement. She's trying to get out quickly because she assumes you have nothing special coming." I stared at the text, my heart beating faster. "So if you sign this agreement as written," Elliot said, "you're waiving any claim to her future income and she's waiving any claim to yours. Once the divorce is finalized and you claim the prize, she can't legally go after it. The key is timing. You must not collect the prize until the divorce is complete and recorded in the system." "Is that actually legal?" "It's a gray area, but very defensible. The key facts: the prize will be claimed after the dissolution of the marriage, and she explicitly waived future gains. Plus, this document was drafted at her request through her lawyer." "She can't claim she didn't understand it?" "If she finds out about the ticket before the divorce is finalized, then it becomes complicated," Elliot admitted. "She could try to argue that the winnings were effectively part of the marital estate since the ticket was purchased before separation. She'd have some ground to ask a judge to revisit the terms. That's why you must keep this absolutely secret. Do not tell family, do not tell friends, do not hint at it in texts or social media. No one can know until we're done. I nodded slowly. How much will you charge to handle this? My standard fee for a straightforward divorce is $5,000. Given the stakes here, my fee will be $15,000 payable after you collect the prize. Done, I said immediately. Elliot extended his hand. I shook it firmly, feeling as though I had just made the smartest decision of my life. Congratulations in advance, Darius. If we play this right, you're about to walk away from a bad marriage free and very wealthy. I left Elliot's office with a clear plan and walked back into a world that felt fundamentally different. The Dallas skyline stretched out before me through the building's glass lobby. The same view I'd seen 1,000 times, but now every detail seemed sharper, more vivid. People rushed past on the sidewalk, absorbed in their own dramas, completely unaware that the man walking among them carried a secret worth millions. On my way back to the apartment, I stopped at a small park and sat on a bench for a few minutes, staring straight ahead while joggers passed and someone threw a tennis ball for their dog. The contrast between their ordinary routines and the storm raging inside my chest was almost surreal. My phone buzzed with a text from Clayton asking if I'd be back for the afternoon meetings. I texted back that I had a personal matter and would be in tomorrow. By the time I walked into the apartment that afternoon, Vanessa was already there. I heard movement from the bedroom before I saw her. She was stuffing clothes into 2 large suitcases spread open on the bed, working with the focused efficiency of someone who'd been planning this for a while. She looked up, startled for a moment, then quickly composed herself. "Where have you been? Working?" The lie came easily. I shrugged out of my jacket. "What are you doing?" "Packing. Garrett is coming to get me in about an hour. I'm staying with him while we finalize everything." That was fast. She ignored the comment and kept folding clothes, her movements precise and deliberate. "Have you thought about the papers?" I took the envelope from my messenger bag and sat on the edge of the bed. "I signed them." Vanessa froze, then grabbed the envelope and flipped through the pages, checking each one for my signature. When she was satisfied, she looked up at me with thinly veiled relief and something that almost resembled triumph. "Thank you for not making this difficult." Her tone carried a hint of disappointment, as if part of her had wanted the drama of watching me fall apart. "My lawyer will file everything on Monday." "Perfect. That's it then." She paused in her packing, studying my face. "You're not going to say anything else?" "What do you want me to say, Vanessa? You've made your feelings about me and our life together very clear. I'm not going to beg you to stay. You want something else. Go get it." For a brief second, something flickered across her face. Guilt, maybe, or doubt. But it vanished just as quickly, replaced by her usual cool resolve. "This is better for both of us. You deserve someone who truly appreciates you. I deserve to be happy. I hope Garrett's penthouse is everything you dreamed. It will be." She zipped one suitcase closed with a sharp tug. "He's everything you never were." The doorbell rang before I could respond. Vanessa nearly ran to answer it. When she opened the door, I saw him for the first time. Garrett Ashford, tall and polished in a fitted navy blazer that probably cost more than my monthly salary, his Rolex catching the afternoon light streaming through the window. His cologne drifted into the apartment before he did, something expensive and deliberately chosen. "Hey, baby." He kissed Vanessa with an easy familiarity that made it clear this was not new, that they'd crossed every line long before she handed me those papers. Then he glanced at me, his eyes doing a quick assessment, cataloging and dismissing me in the span of a heartbeat. "You must be Darius." I said nothing. I just met his gaze with a blank expression, watching him the way you might watch a stranger at a bus stop. Vanessa laughed awkwardly, a nervous sound that didn't match her usual confidence. "Garrett, can you grab the suitcases?" He stepped inside like he already owned the place, lifting both suitcases with casual strength and carrying them toward the hallway. Vanessa lingered in the doorway and turned to face me one last time. "I'll send someone for the rest of my things next week, and my lawyer will be in touch about dividing what we have. Whatever you want. Goodbye, Darius. Goodbye, Vanessa." After 8 years together, that was how it ended. 2 words at the doorway and then she was gone. When the door closed, I sat on the couch and pulled out my phone. I opened the Texas Lottery app and checked the numbers again, just to make sure I hadn't imagined the whole thing. $5.2 million just sitting there waiting to be claimed. All I had to do was wait out a bureaucratic clock and keep my mouth shut. The next few days blurred together in a strange suspension between my old life and whatever was coming next. On Monday, Elliot called to confirm he had filed the response to the divorce petition on my behalf. "Everything looks clean because your wife's attorney drafted these terms. A judge is likely to approve them without any issues. You're looking at about 35 business days before the divorce is finalized." 35 days. 35 days. Do not talk about that ticket to anyone. I promised I wouldn't. That night, my phone buzzed with a call from my older sister, Monica. "Is it true?" she asked immediately, her voice tight with concern. "Mom said Vanessa left. She heard it from Vanessa's mother. Why do we have to find out like this?" I exhaled slowly, pressing my fingers against my temple. "It's true. We're getting divorced." "What happened? Is there any way to fix it?" "There's nothing to fix. She's with someone else. She made her choice." "With someone else?" Monica's voice rose. "Since when?" 3 months. His name is Garrett, some big-shot architect with a fancy condo. There was a long pause on the line, and I could hear the anger building in my sister's silence. "I can't believe she did that to you. I thought she was better than that." "So did I. Do you need anything? I can come stay with you for a few days." "I appreciate it, but I just need some time to think. I'll call Mom tomorrow." After I hung up, I turned my phone off. I didn't have the energy to explain the same story to every family member and friend who'd heard the news through the grapevine. The next morning, Clayton called me into his office at the firm. He was in his early 50s, a methodical man who'd built his career on attention to detail and a reputation for fairness. "Darius, I heard you're going through a divorce. I'm sorry you're dealing with that. If you need a lighter workload or some time off, let me know." "Thank you. I think staying busy will help." Clayton cleared his throat, shifting some papers on his desk. "On another note, we've been discussing expanding the accounting department. We're creating a senior manager role. Your performance has been excellent over the years. Are you interested?" A week earlier, that offer would have felt like the best news of my year. Recognition of my hard work, a raise, a step forward in a career I'd been building since I was 23. Now, with millions silently waiting for me in the form of an unclaimed lottery ticket, it felt strangely small, like watching someone offer you a glass of water when you're standing next to an ocean. Still, it was part of a life I had built from nothing, and I respected that. "Yes, I'm interested. Thank you. We'll finalize details next week." Life somehow kept moving forward, one foot in front of the other, even as everything beneath the surface had fundamentally changed. A few nights later, while I was eating takeout on the couch and half watching a basketball game I didn't care about, my phone vibrated with a text from an unknown number. When I opened it, my jaw tightened and heat rushed to my face. It was a photo of Vanessa and Garrett at an upscale restaurant in downtown Dallas, one of those places with valet parking and a dress code. She was wearing a sparkling dress I'd never seen before, something that probably cost more than our monthly grocery budget used to be. Garrett had his arm around her, smiling confidently at the camera like a man who'd just won something valuable. Underneath, the caption read, "Living my best life, thanks for letting me go." I stared at the photo, anger rising in my chest like a wave I couldn't hold back. She had sent it to hurt me, to prove how quickly she had upgraded her life, to rub it in that she believed she had won. My first instinct was to reply with a screenshot of the lottery app, to tell her I had won, to blow up her perfect picture with a truth she had walked away from. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, trembling slightly. I started typing a response, then stopped. Elliot's warning echoed in my mind, clear and insistent. 35 days, now closer to 28. Do not tell anyone. Do not hint. Do not give her any reason to dig deeper. I deleted the photo and blocked the number she had used. She could enjoy her illusion for a few more weeks. The truth would find her soon enough. On Friday night, I decided I needed to get out of the apartment. The walls had started to feel too close, the silence too heavy. I went to a bar I used to visit with college friends, a small place with soft lighting and jazz playing low in the background. I took a seat at the bar and ordered a beer, feeling more like an observer in my own life than a participant. I was halfway through my second beer when someone slid onto the stool beside me. Darius Holloway? I turned and blinked in surprise. The woman looking at me had warm brown eyes and a familiar smile that pulled at memories from years ago. Simone Laurent? She laughed, the sound genuine and unguarded. I can't believe you remember my last name. Simone and I had studied accounting together at the University of North Texas. We had worked on group projects, stayed in touch for a year or two after graduation, and then life had pulled us in different directions. She looked a little older now, of course, but there was still warmth in her eyes and an ease in the way she carried herself. How are you? Are you still married to Vanessa? The question landed harder than she intended. Actually, we're getting divorced. Oh, she said it quickly, her expression shifting to concern. I didn't know. I'm sorry. It's all right. It was her decision. Simone ordered a drink and we ended up talking for hours, catching up on work and old classmates and the paths our lives had taken since graduation. She told me she worked at another firm across town and that she had been briefly married but divorced 2 years earlier. You know, the strangest part of divorce, Simone said after a while, swirling the ice in her glass, is that you realize the person you were living with was someone you only thought you knew. I nodded slowly, feeling the truth of her words settle in my chest. Exactly. It's like waking up and realizing your life was one long miscalculation. But it's also freeing. She looked at me with something like understanding. It means you get to figure out who you are without that person's expectations weighing you down. Her words lodged in my chest, finding a space that had been empty since Vanessa walked out. For the first time since she left, I felt something like possibility instead of just loss. Do you want another drink? I asked. Only if you promise we won't wait another 10 years to talk again. Promise. We exchanged numbers before leaving. There was nothing romantic in it, just a mutual recognition between two people who had survived similar storms and were still standing. When I walked back into my quiet apartment that night, I felt slightly less alone. The following Monday, Elliot called with an update. The judge has approved the filing. Because it's an uncontested divorce with no children, everything is moving faster than usual. Your final hearing is scheduled in 10 days. 10 days? 10 days. After that, you'll be officially divorced and Vanessa will have no legal grounds to touch that pre. That night, I allowed myself for the first time to really think about what I would do with the money. I pictured quitting my job, buying a house somewhere quiet outside the city, traveling across the country to places I'd only seen in photographs. Maybe even starting something of my own, a small firm where I could set my own hours and choose my own clients. And somewhere in those daydreams floated an image of Vanessa's face when she eventually discovered what she had walked away from. I knew it was petty, but the thought of her realizing the magnitude of her mistake made enduring the next 10 days a little easier. The day of the final hearing came faster than I expected. It was a gray, rainy Tuesday when I drove to the courthouse downtown with Elliot. My stomach fluttered, not from fear but from anticipation. "Nervous?" Elliot asked as we stepped out of the car, rain misting down around us. "Not as much as I thought I would be." Inside the courthouse, we passed through security and walked to the family courtroom waiting area. Vanessa was already there, sitting on a bench with her attorney, a woman in a navy suit who looked competent and expensive. Vanessa wore a cream pantsuit, her hair neat, makeup flawless. She looked composed, almost bored, as if this was just another appointment on her schedule. When she saw me, our eyes met briefly. There was no sadness there, no regret, just a cool indifference that confirmed everything I already knew. I had become invisible to her long before she handed me those papers. I sat with Elliot on the opposite side of the room. As we waited, I heard Vanessa's attorney lean over and ask in a low voice, "That's your husband?" "Yes, don't worry. He's not going to make this difficult. He just wants to get it over with." "Are you sure there are no hidden assets? Any accounts I should know about?" Vanessa laughed softly, the sound carrying across the quiet waiting room. "Believe me, Darius is completely transparent. He earns $62,000 a year as an accountant, has less than $8,000 in savings, and an apartment he can barely afford. There's nothing hidden." Each word was a small insult disguised as fact. It stung to hear my life summed up that way, reduced to numbers that made me sound small and unremarkable. But at the same time, it confirmed something important. She still had no idea, she had no clue what was waiting for me just beyond the finish line of this divorce. Elliot touched my arm lightly, a silent reminder to stay calm and let it roll off. A few minutes later, a court officer stepped out and called our names. We followed him into a small courtroom. The judge was a man in his 60s with silver hair and tired eyes, the kind of expression that came from seeing too many marriages fall apart over too many years. He flipped through our file with practiced efficiency. "Good morning. I've reviewed the petition for divorce between Vanessa Sterling and Darius Holloway. Both parties have signed and agreed to the terms presented. There are no minor children involved, and the division of assets has been accepted by both sides. Is that correct?" "Yes, Your Honor." Vanessa's attorney spoke first. "Yes, Your Honor," Elliot added. The judge glanced at us over his glasses. "Do both parties understand they are waiving any claims to each other's future income and unexpected gains?" "Yes, Your Honor." Vanessa's voice was clear and certain. "Yes, Your Honor." I kept my tone steady. "Mr. Holloway, are you agreeing to these terms freely and without coercion?" "I am." "Mrs. Sterling, are you agreeing freely as well?" "Yes." The judge signed the papers with a few swift strokes of his pen. "By the authority vested in me by the state of Texas, I declare the marriage between Vanessa Sterling and Darius Holloway dissolved. This divorce is effective immediately. Good day." 5 minutes. That was all it took to end 8 years of marriage. We walked out into the hallway, the sound of our footsteps echoing on the tile floor. Vanessa paused and turned to me, her expression softening just slightly. "I hope you find what you're looking for, Darius." Her tone sounded polite, but faintly condescending, as if she doubted I ever would. "You too, Vanessa." She nodded, turned away, and walked down the corridor with her lawyer, her heels clicking a steady rhythm that faded into the distance. Elliot and I stepped out into the light rain, the air cool and clean after the stale courthouse atmosphere. "Congratulations, you're officially a free man. Now we move on to the second part, making you a free and wealthy man. So what's next?" "We give it 24 hours for the paperwork to be fully recorded in the system. Tomorrow at this time, you go to the Texas Lottery Commission office downtown, present your ticket, and claim your prize. At that point, you're no longer married. Vanessa has no claim to that money, and if she finds out before you get there, it doesn't matter now. The divorce is final and she waived future earnings. Even if she found out and tried to cause trouble, she wouldn't have a legal leg to stand on. That night, I opened the small fireproof safe in my closet and took out the ticket one more time. I held it under the light, tracing the numbers with my finger, letting the reality of what was about to happen sink in. Tomorrow, everything would change. I lay awake most of the night, my mind flickering between excitement and anxious what-ifs. What if I had misread the ticket somehow? What if there was some technicality that disqualified me? What if this was all some elaborate misunderstanding, a cosmic joke played at my expense? The next morning, I put on my best suit, the same one Vanessa had once criticized, and drove to the Texas Lottery Commission headquarters. It was a tall building of glass and steel with a state flag fluttering out front, imposing and official. Inside, security guards watched the lobby with practiced indifference. I approached the reception desk, my heart hammering against my ribs. "Good morning. How can I help you?" "I'm here to claim a prize." I pulled the ticket from an inner pocket, handling it like fragile glass. Her eyes widened slightly when she saw the amount printed on the screen after she scanned it. "One moment, I'll call our major prize coordinator." A few minutes later, a man in a dark suit approached. He was middle-aged with a professional demeanor that immediately put me at ease. "Mr. Holloway, I'm Michael Reyes. Please come with me." He led me to a private office on an upper floor where a scanner and a computer waited on a conference table. The room had windows overlooking downtown Dallas, the skyline stretching out in every direction. "First, we'll verify the ticket." Michael fed it into the scanner with careful hands. A green light flickered on and the machine beeped once, a sound that seemed to echo in the quiet room. Michael smiled, and something in his expression told me this moment was as significant for him as it was for me. "Congratulations, Mr. Holloway. You've won $5.2 million. Hearing it out loud did something to me. The room felt suddenly brighter and strangely far away, like I was watching the scene from outside my own body. Michael continued, businesslike and efficient, walking me through the process with the ease of someone who'd done this many times before. "We'll need some documents, photo identification, proof of address, and you'll need to complete some forms for tax purposes." I handed over my driver's license and a utility bill and spent the next hour filling out paperwork while he explained how the payout worked. "After federal and state taxes, your net will be approximately $3.85 million. You can receive the money as a lump sum or as annual payments over 20 years. "Lump sum." The answer came automatically. I didn't want this stretched out over 2 decades. I wanted it now, solid and real. Michael nodded. "We'll transfer the funds to your bank account within 5 business days. There's one more item. By state law, major prize winners must allow their name and photograph to be made public. We'll do a brief photo and a short quote for our website and press release. Publicity." My heart gave a small leap, but this time it wasn't fear. It was anticipation. "When will that be released?" "Typically within a week. Local media often picks it up." I agreed, signed the last page, and followed him to a small studio room where a photographer took several pictures of me holding a giant ceremonial check with my name printed across it in bold letters. They asked me for a short statement about how I felt. "It feels like a dream. I'm grateful and plan to be responsible with this blessing." The words felt inadequate, too small to capture what was really happening, but they were safe and appropriate. When I was done, I walked out of the building into the bright afternoon sun, feeling like the world had shifted on its axis. On my way to the car, I called Elliot. "It's official. They verified the ticket. The money will be in my account next week." "Excellent. And the publicity? They'll release it within a week. Perfect timing." You'll be financially secure and legally protected before your ex-wife even processes what happened. When I checked my bank account the following Monday, the numbers on the screen almost made my knees buckle. Where there had been a modest savings balance the week before, there was now $3,850,000 sitting in my account. I stared at it for a long moment, half expecting the digits to rearrange themselves into something more reasonable. They didn't. The first thing I did was open a separate investment account and transfer $500,000 into it. I made an appointment with a financial advisor that Elliot recommended, planning to spread the money across safe investments, index funds, municipal bonds, and a few stable stocks. I wasn't going to be reckless. I was going to be smart. I called Clayton and told him I needed to talk. Of course, is everything all right? I'm going to accept the promotion you offered, but I'm also going to request a month of vacation. I have some personal matters I want to take care of. You've certainly earned it. We'll make it work. A few days later, the Texas Lottery Commission released its press statement. The headline read, "Dallas accountant wins $5.2 million jackpot." There was my picture, smiling awkwardly and holding the giant check, looking like a man who still couldn't quite believe what had happened to him. They quoted me saying it felt like a dream, that I was grateful and planned to be responsible. Within hours, local news stations picked it up. People started sharing the article on social media, commenting and speculating and congratulating a stranger they'd never met. My phone lit up with calls and messages from people I hadn't spoken to in years. Monica was one of the first to call, her voice almost frantic with excitement. "Darius, is this real? You won the lottery?" "It's real." "When? How long have you known?" "I bought the ticket the same day Vanessa gave me the divorce papers. I was on my way home to tell her when she handed them to me." There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line, and I could almost hear my sister's mind working through the implications. Does she know? She didn't, but she will now. I can't even imagine how she's going to react. I have a pretty good idea. The reaction came faster than I expected. 2 nights later, around 10 in the evening, my phone started buzzing with Vanessa's name flashing on the screen. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. It rang again. I ignored it. She called 5 times in a row, each call more insistent than the last. Then the calls stopped and the texts began. "We need to talk. This is urgent. I know you saw the news. We have to discuss this. It's not fair that you're ignoring me. Darius, please, I made a mistake. We can fix this. We could try again. I still love you." I read that last line 3 times, letting the words sink in and then bounce off the armor I'd built around myself over the past few weeks. Love had not stopped her from walking out when she thought I had nothing. It was not love calling me now. It was regret and fear and the desperate scrambling of someone who realized too late that they'd made a catastrophic miscalculation. I blocked her number and set my phone face down on the table. Outside, the city lights of Dallas glowed against the night sky, indifferent and eternal. The next morning, Elliot called before I'd even finished my coffee. Vanessa's attorney reached out. They want to discuss the possibility of reopening the divorce settlement because of newly discovered assets. They mentioned an annulment. I set my cup down carefully, watching the dark liquid settle. Can they do that? They can file anything they want. Doesn't mean it'll go anywhere. The prize was claimed after the divorce was finalized, and she signed away any rights to future income. They have nothing. If they actually file something, we respond. If they just threaten and posture, we ignore them. So what do we do? Exactly what you're already doing. Don't engage. If they file, we'll deal with it. If they just make noise, let them. Legally, they're grasping at air. Later that week, I took my first real day off since the whole nightmare began. I drove to a quiet coffee shop in Fort Worth, where I knew no one would recognize me or care about lottery winners from Dallas. I ordered a black coffee and sat at a corner table, half reading a book and half staring out the window at people going about their ordinary lives. "Darius?" I looked up to see Simone standing there with a to-go cup in hand, her expression caught somewhere between surprise and amusement. "Simone, twice in 1 month. Fate is getting bold." She laughed and sat across from me when I gestured to the empty chair. "So I saw the news. There's no way I'm not saying something. Congratulations, 5.2 million, that's incredible." "Thank you. It still feels unreal." "Let me guess." Simone leaned back, her eyes sharp with understanding. "Your ex-wife is suddenly very interested in talking." I couldn't help laughing, the sound bitter but genuine. "You have a talent for predicting people." "It's not talent, it's experience. I've seen this story play out too many times." She took a sip of her coffee, measuring her next words. "She left because she thought you were a dead end, and now that you're not, she wants to rewrite history. She's called, texted, had her lawyer threaten legal action." "And what are you going to do?" "Nothing. The divorce is final. The money is mine. There's nothing left to discuss." Simone lifted her cup slightly in a quiet toast. "That's what I like to hear. Poetic justice." We spent the afternoon talking, the conversation flowing easily between topics like two people who'd rediscovered a friendship they'd forgotten they had. She told me more about her own difficult first year after divorce, how she'd eventually built a life she liked on her own terms, how she'd learned to trust her instincts again. "The best thing about having some money," Simone said as the sun started to slant through the windows, "is not what you can buy. It's the freedom. The freedom to say no. The freedom not to tolerate disrespect just because you're afraid of being alone." Her words stayed with me long after I left the cafe, following me home like a truth I was still learning to accept. That Sunday afternoon, I was at home cleaning up the kitchen when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I looked through the peephole, my chest tightened. Vanessa stood in the hallway, her eyes red and puffy, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. She had on jeans and a sweatshirt instead of her usual carefully planned outfits, and she looked smaller somehow, diminished. She rang the bell again, more insistently. "Darius, I know you're there. Please, just give me 5 minutes. I need to explain." I stayed silent, my back against the wall, every muscle in my body locked in place. "Darius, please." Her voice cracked, and I could hear the desperation bleeding through. "I made a terrible mistake, but we can fix this. I still love you. I don't care about the money. I just want us back." The words echoed in the small hallway, muffled by the door between us. I thought about opening it, about listening, about finally saying all the things I had rehearsed in my head during sleepless nights. Then I thought about the restaurant photo, the word mediocre, the way she never looked back when she rolled her suitcases away with a man she'd known for 3 months. I stayed quiet, letting the silence answer for me. After several more minutes of knocking and pleading, Vanessa's footsteps retreated down the stairs. I watched from the peephole as she walked out of the building, wiping her face with the back of her hand. A small part of me felt something like pity. The larger part felt a cold, calm certainty. She had made her choices, and now she was living with the consequences. The next morning, Elliot called again, his voice carrying a different tone this time. "Vanessa filed a civil suit. She's alleging that you concealed assets during the divorce and asking the court to annul the settlement. Can she actually do that? She can file anything she wants, but this isn't going anywhere. The timeline is clear. The prize was claimed after the divorce was finalized. The waiver of future income is explicit and unambiguous. This is a last-ditch attempt. We'll show up, present the facts, and the judge will dismiss it." "How long will that take?" "A month or so. In the meantime, your money is safe. It's already in your accounts in your name. There's nothing anyone can do about that. A few weeks later, we stood in another courtroom, this one smaller and stuffier than the last. Vanessa sat with her lawyer a few benches away, and I could see the change in her immediately. She looked thinner, more tired than before, with dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. When the judge asked her attorney to explain the complaint, the woman argued that I had deliberately hidden the lottery ticket, violating Vanessa's rights as a spouse to full financial disclosure. Elliot stood, calm and precise, and laid out the dates with clinical efficiency. The day of the ticket purchase, the day Vanessa handed me the divorce papers, the day the divorce was finalized, the day the prize was claimed. He showed the signed waiver of future income, the document Vanessa herself had requested through her own attorney. At the time of the divorce, there was no prize, only the possibility of one. My client acted within his rights at all times, and Mrs. Sterling voluntarily signed away any claim to his future gains. The judge flipped through the documents with a frown, his fingers tapping against the bench. After what felt like an eternity, he looked up and spoke with the weary authority of someone who'd seen every variation of human greed. This lawsuit has no legal merit. The motion is dismissed. The divorce remains final. Good day. Vanessa let out a soft sob as we exited the courtroom, the sound small and broken. Elliot leaned close as we walked toward the parking garage. It's over. She can't do anything else. I walked toward my car, my footsteps echoing on the concrete, feeling lighter than I had in months. The sound of my name stopped me halfway across the garage. Darius, wait! I stopped but didn't turn right away. When I did, Vanessa was already in front of me, her face streaked with tears that looked genuine and raw. Please, just listen to me for 1 minute. There's nothing I need to hear. I made a mistake, the worst mistake of my life. Her voice trembled, words rushing out like she was afraid I'd walk away before she could finish. But it was never about the money, not at first. When I left, I thought I wanted something different, something more exciting. I thought I needed someone like Garrett. But I realized too late that what I needed was what I had with you. Did you realize that before or after you saw the lottery news? Her mouth opened, then closed. Her eyes dropped to the concrete floor. That's what I thought. I kept my voice level, drained of anger or satisfaction. When you asked me for a divorce, you told me our life was mediocre, that I was ordinary, that you deserved better. You were right about one thing. You do deserve something, exactly what you chose, a life without me. Darius, please, I know I hurt you, but can't you forgive me? We were married 8 years. Doesn't that mean anything to you? It meant everything to me. You were my whole world, but to you it was never enough. As soon as you thought you could get more somewhere else, you walked out without looking back. I paused, letting the weight of that truth settle between us. Forgiveness isn't the same thing as going back. I can forgive you, but I don't ever want to live like that again. Garrett left me. The words came out as barely more than a whisper. 2 weeks after the lawsuit was dismissed. He said he didn't want to be part of the drama. He said I deserved to lose everything for being so foolish. On that point, he and I finally agree. How can you be so cruel? I'm not being cruel, I'm being honest. For years, I let your opinion of me define my worth. I accepted the idea that I wasn't enough. Winning the lottery didn't give me value. It just gave me the freedom to see I had value all along. I walked past her toward my car. I heard the sobbing behind me, raw and unrestrained, but I didn't look back. That was the day I realized something important. The real prize wasn't the money, it was the ability to walk away from someone who had never truly seen me. 6 months later, my life looked completely different. I had accepted the promotion at the firm and stayed for 3 more months, long enough to leave on excellent terms and collect a few larger paychecks I no longer needed. I sat down with my new financial advisor and put most of my money into conservative investments designed to generate steady income for the rest of my life. The conversations about municipal bonds and dividend yields felt surreal, but I listened carefully and asked questions until I understood every decision we made. I bought a modest but beautiful house on the outskirts of Dallas with a yard, a small patio, and a quiet view of distant hills. It wasn't a penthouse with glass walls and a city skyline view. It was better. It felt like mine. For the first time in my adult life, I woke up in a space that felt peaceful instead of tense, where the silence was comfortable rather than oppressive. I took some of the money and traveled, keeping all my destinations within the United States as I'd promised myself. I spent a week in New Orleans listening to live jazz on Frenchman Street and eating food so good it made me close my eyes. I went to San Diego and walked along the ocean every morning, watching surfers catch waves in the early light. I visited Seattle and watched the sun set behind the mountains, the sky streaked in purple and orange. I spent a few days in Savannah wandering shaded streets lined with old trees and quiet parks that felt frozen in time. During those trips, I didn't post pictures online. I didn't check to see who was watching my life or keeping tabs on what I was doing. I realized that the sweetest parts of success are the ones that don't need an audience. While I traveled, I exchanged messages regularly with Simone. Our friendship deepened in a way that felt organic and unhurried. When I returned from Seattle, she met me for dinner and asked about my trip in detail, genuinely interested in the experience rather than impressed by the money behind it. A few months after that, Simone and I took a short trip together to Charleston. We walked along the waterfront, toured historic houses with their stories of revolution and reconstruction, and spent long evenings talking over dinner at restaurants tucked into old buildings with exposed brick and candlelight. One night, we sat on a bench watching the water move slowly under the streetlights, the air warm and thick with salt and jasmine. "You know what I respect about you most?" Simone turned to look at me, her expression thoughtful. "What's that?" "You didn't let the money turn you into someone else." I looked down at my jeans and sneakers. "I have the same clothes." She laughed, the sound genuine and warm. "I'm serious. Some people would take that money and set out to prove something, to show everyone they're important now. You just used it to give yourself room to breathe. Money doesn't change who you are. It just amplifies what was already there. If you're selfish, you become more selfish. If you're decent, you have more chances to act decently. I'm trying hard to be in the second category." "You're doing a good job." She bumped her shoulder gently against mine, and I felt something warm and quiet settle between us. Something that didn't need to be named or rushed. Back in Dallas, I decided I wanted to do something meaningful with my time beyond managing my investments and traveling. I began volunteering at a local community center, offering free financial counseling to families who were struggling. I sat with people at worn tables in fluorescent-lit rooms, helping them build budgets, explaining tax forms they'd been afraid to open, outlining plans to pay off debt that had seemed insurmountable. Many of them had never had anyone talk to them about money without judgment or condescension. They came in defensive, expecting to be lectured or shamed, and left with a sense of direction and hope. Watching them walk out of those sessions with their heads held a little higher felt more rewarding than any vacation I could take. Eventually, I started a small foundation focused on financial education for low-income communities. It was nothing flashy, no big galas or headlines, just a quiet operation that partnered with schools and community centers to teach basic financial literacy. But it felt right in a way nothing else had in years. Around that time, Monica updated me occasionally on Vanessa's life, pieces of information that reached me through the grapevine of family connections. Garrett left as soon as the lawyers were done, Monica told me during one call, her voice carrying both satisfaction and pity. Vanessa had to move back in with her parents. She lost a few friends who were tired of hearing her complain about how she ruined her life. Do you feel anything when you hear that? I thought about it for a moment, searching for anger or triumph or even sadness. Honestly, no, not happiness, not sadness, just distance. Like you feel when you remember a movie you watched years ago. That sounds healthy. A year after the divorce, I ran into Vanessa at a supermarket in Dallas. I was picking up ingredients for a dinner I planned to cook for Simone at my house, mentally going through the recipe and making sure I hadn't forgotten anything. I turned into the dairy aisle and nearly collided with her cart. For a second we both froze, caught in that awkward space where running away would be more obvious than staying. Vanessa looked different. She had gained some weight and her clothes were simple and plain. The kind of outfits you wear when you've stopped caring about impressing anyone. Her hair was tidy but not styled with the same precision I remembered. But it was her eyes that had changed the most. There was a heaviness there, a quiet sadness she couldn't mask with makeup or forced smiles. "Hi, Darius." "Hi." We stood there in the fluorescent glow of the supermarket, the hum of refrigerators filling the silence between us. Then she gave a small nod, almost like a bow of acknowledgement or surrender, and pushed her cart past me without another word. I watched her go, waiting to feel something sharp or significant. I felt only a calm emptiness, the emotional equivalent of white noise. That night, while I chopped vegetables in my kitchen, Simone sat at the counter sipping a glass of wine and watching me cook with an amused expression. "You're unusually quiet. What's on your mind?" "I saw Vanessa at the store today." "Did you talk?" "Just said hello, that was it." "How did it feel?" I thought about the question as I scraped chopped onions into a pan, listening to them sizzle, like seeing an old classmate from school I barely remember. No anger, no longing, just nothing. That's how you know you've healed, when the person who hurt you becomes just another person moving through the world. 3 years later, I received an email from Vanessa. It was long, carefully written, and more honest than anything she had ever said to me while we were married. She wrote about the last few years, the regrets that kept her awake at night, the therapy she had started, the patterns she had begun to understand about herself and why she made the choices she did. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she wrote, "and I certainly don't expect you to want to hear from me. But I needed you to know that I understand what I threw away now. It wasn't the money, it was you, a good man who loved me when I didn't know how to love myself. I treated you as if you were small when you were never small. I hope you're happy, Darius. I truly hope so." I read the email twice, then showed it to Simone. "Are you going to reply?" "I'm not sure. Part of me wants to ignore it and keep it as the period at the end of that sentence. Another part thinks maybe she deserves to know the truth, that I am happy. Do whatever gives you peace." After thinking about it for a day, I wrote back. The response was brief, measured, and final. "Vanessa, thank you for your honesty. It sounds like you've done a lot of hard work, and I respect that. I forgave you a long time ago, not because you needed it, but because I did. I found happiness with someone who values me, and I sincerely hope you find your own. Take care." She never responded, and I didn't need her to. That chapter of my life had closed years ago. The email was just confirmation that both of us had finally accepted it. 5 years after that Thursday when I walked into our apartment with a winning ticket in my pocket and divorce papers waiting on the table, my life was almost unrecognizable. Simone and I had quietly built a life together, taking our time, not rushing into marriage or making grand declarations. We got to know each other not as people running from something, but as people walking towards something better. When I finally asked her to marry me, it was one early morning on a beach in Florida, just as the sun rose over the Atlantic. We stood barefoot in the sand, the waves curling gently at our feet, and I realized this moment felt more real than anything I'd experienced in my first marriage. You know, you don't have to ask. I already know the answer. I want to ask anyway. Will you marry me? Yes. She said it simply, without hesitation, and that one word felt more solid than any promise I'd ever heard in my life. We had a small ceremony in my backyard a few months later. Only close family and real friends were there, the kind of people who'd stood by me through the worst and celebrated with me through the best. Monica stood beside me as my witness, her eyes bright with tears she didn't bother hiding. Elliot attended and joked that this time he'd make sure the prenup was unbreakable, though Simone and I had already worked that out with calm, practical conversations about protecting what each of us had built. During her toast at the reception, Monica raised her glass and said, "My brother once thought the worst day of his life was the day his first marriage ended. It turned out that day opened the door to everything he truly needed." People laughed and wiped their eyes, and I knew she was right. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you is also the thing that saves you. A couple of years later, Simone and I welcomed a daughter into our family. We named her Leah. She grew up running around the yard of the house I bought with my lottery winnings, her laughter echoing off the fence as she chased bubbles and butterflies and the dog we eventually adopted from a shelter. I kept doing volunteer work and expanded my foundations programs, teaching financial literacy in community centers and high schools across Dallas. The investments continued to grow quietly in the background, generating enough income that I never had to worry about bills or unexpected expenses again. I drove a reliable mid-range sedan that got me where I needed to go. Our house stayed modest, comfortable without being ostentatious. When we took vacations, they were meaningful experiences rather than expensive displays, time spent together rather than money spent to impress. I no longer felt any impulse to prove anything to anyone. The opinions of strangers didn't matter. The judgments of people who didn't know my story carried no weight. I had learned, slowly and painfully, that my worth was not determined by someone else's measurement. Sometimes on calm evenings I sat on the back patio while Leah played with her toys in the grass and Simone read a book nearby. The sky over Texas turned soft orange and pink, and the air cooled as the sun dipped toward the horizon. In those moments, my mind would sometimes slide back to that Thursday years ago, the envelope on the coffee table, the ticket in my pocket, Vanessa's voice calling our life mediocre. I would think about everything that had followed, the shock, the anger, the secrecy, the courtroom, the photo of Vanessa in Garrett's arms, the lottery office, the press release, the late-night calls I never answered. I would think about the strange, perfect symmetry of it all, how Vanessa left because she wanted more, and in leaving she accidentally gave me the chance to have more than either of us had imagined. But most of the time when my thoughts drifted that way, they didn't stay there long. I would look over at Simone, whose quiet strength and steady kindness anchored our little family in ways I was still learning to appreciate. I would watch Leah stumble and then get back up, determined to run again, her resilience a mirror of something I'd found in myself. I would feel the solid wood of the chair beneath me, the gentle weight of the life I had built piece by piece after everything fell apart, and I would realize that although the money had changed my circumstances, it wasn't what had healed me. What healed me was choosing myself when someone else decided I wasn't enough. What healed me was learning that my worth was not tied to anyone's opinion, Not Vanessa's, not Garrett's, not strangers who read headlines about lottery winners. The ticket gave me freedom. The betrayal gave me clarity. What I did with both is what gave me the life I have now.